Welcome you all here this afternoon to our next networking event. Glad to see a few familiar faces here, but also some new ones, so thank you to everyone for coming along. Before I introduce our speaker today, just want to give you a quick date for the diary. 14th of September is our next event, so pop that in the diary, and I'd love to see you here. Also, if there's anyone else you think would benefit from coming along, please pass the invitation on. We'd love to see more people here. So, we're very grateful today to our guest speaker, Ollie Matthews, for joining us today. Ollie is owner of Ollie Matthews Health Coach. He's a specialist in functional medicine, nutrition, and he's obviously a health coach as well as being an international speaker and author. So, a busy man, but glad to have him here today, and he's going to talk to us today about something which I think is quite relevant to us all, tips for avoiding burnout. So I'll be listening very carefully, and let's give Ollie a warm welcome as he comes up.
Hello. First off, before I actually get into the presentation, hands up if you sleep through the night, you go to bed, you get to sleep without any problems, you don't wake up, you get 8 hours of sleep, wake up the next morning and you feel totally refreshed with no afternoon energy dips. That's alright then, at least we've got a presentation now. So the presentation being, am I stressed? Don't tell me I'm stressed, I know I'm stressed, stop stressing me out. A little bit of tongue in cheek, but stress is a big part of all of our lives, right? And we need stress, but it's the chronic stress for extended periods of time that impacts our performance. So I'll give you a quick overview of who I am, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the things that we see that are actually stressing us out. So I'm a nutrition therapist, functional medicine, healthcare provider, practitioner, whatever you want to call me. Overweight, I was a DJ, I went to music college, and then had this corporate career in a big business in Norwich, beginning with A. No need to mention any other names. And then competitive bodybuilder, and it was then that I turned healthy. Where I dropped 100 pounds to compete on the bodybuilding stage, it was the thing which you think is going to give you confidence. You get on the stage, you're in the best physical shape that you look like, aesthetic shape, best shape of your life. But inside, I was low on energy, couldn't sleep. I was severely overtrained and not able to function effectively. And that was in my mid-20s. My last show was 2012. And there's a picture of me that was back in the Optic Wednesday night days, if anyone remember those. And I also wrote a book. Well, there's 2 books. There's the One Day Body Upgrade. I have got some copies here as well, which is all about basically allowing you to find the foundations to move forward with your health. Then I worked with professional endurance athletes, so I had a guy that had just been in the Tour de France, world champion Ultraman athlete, and it was always amazing to think about what I was doing to help them with their health as a nutritionist. But the goal was to get them from A to B as fast as possible, and there was an afterthought of health. And then this guy came along. So I was sitting there, I think it was an October night in like 2016, 17, and this guy, Rick, messages me. And he says, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I know what to do, I need you to tell me to do it. I thought, okay, great, let's have a look into him. He's obviously been referred for some reason. And I looked at his website, and it's Taylor Swift's first manager, and the guy that helped launch Taylor's career. So if this guy has seen stress, it's been pretty crazy. Hour later, we're on the phone, and 3 months later, I'm in his house in Nashville. And he's had some amazing results, dropped a lot of weight, feeling absolutely amazing. And I'm standing there in his kitchen, and his wife, Jill, is there, and his 15-year-old daughter, 13-year-old son, and he says, look, Ollie, you've given me back what Jill married, given my wife back what she married 10 years ago. He just turned 50, and he said, I feel amazing. And the reason that hit home to me was because when I was 15, unfortunately I lost my dad, who who seemed healthy. You can see here in this picture that he was such a fun-loving guy. He was a stressed-out individual. Now, he would be the guy we looked up to. He worked in caravan parks, so he was sales guy at Caister, then sales manager, then headhunter for parks in Essex and Colchester area. And he used to get migraines. He used to get problems with his sleep. He used to get migraines, and he was 47 years old. And on one Monday, I remember he actually texted me. The last text I got from my dad was, "Did you get your money?" And it made me kind of think back, is that we look for providing for our family, we look for providing to our kids, but how many of us are actually focusing so much on how we can provide more than just financially? He then went into hospital with a migraine. He was on a course in Grantham. Then on the Wednesday he had a stroke. On the Saturday we had to turn off his life support machine. And it wasn't until going back to Rick that I realised that we can try and help athletes and all this stuff, but that tickles our ego to say, great, we've got these athletes there. But working with these guys, these men, these women that are stressed out, and actually allow them to see their children grow up, allow me to really truly dive in and say, I want to help people with stress management. So went down the functional medicine route. If you don't know what functional medicine is, it's basically looking at the root cause of a problem, taking a patient-centered approach to health rather than just having medication for it, actually looking at what is actually causing it. And a lot of the times it's stress, which is the biggest thing that causes it. Now, there are some signs that your health is suboptimal, is not as great as it could be, whatever you want to call it. The list is quite big, but sleep problems being a big one, brain fog and forgetting things, low energy and motivation, weight gain around the midsection is a massive one, cold hands and feet. I've put a few posts up on it on social media and done some podcasts on it. Cold hands and feet is a big sign that something is off, especially linked with thyroid and things like that. Low sex drive, irritability, we call it things like hanger outbursts if anyone gets them if they haven't eaten for a while. Things like can't swallow supplements. Little signs that something isn't right, that we just brush to the side, can't eat in the morning, randomly bloating, irregular periods, anxiety and low moods, acid reflux, hormone issues, we could go on. There could be a massive, massive list. Now, hands up if any of you have any of the symptoms. And this is what we have to look at, is that, okay, there are a lot of symptoms, but we normalise these symptoms. And I was saying to someone earlier is that it seems that we've gone into this whole society of normalising just feeling okay, or that we're getting through, normalising that, yeah, we feel a bit meh, rather than actually doing the work to feel good, to feel great, to sleep through the night. And on that note, the biggest sign is sleep problems. That I deal with so many people that they go to bed, their head hits the pillow, they're wired, but their body is just physically tired because their cortisol levels, their melatonin levels, the stress hormone, the sleep hormones are all out of sync. The whole rhythm is out of sync, waking and feeling so low on energy. Now, I'm hoping there's no one that would do this, but how many people would drive to work under the influence of alcohol? Good, I was hoping no hands would go up on that. And the same question is driving your kids to school under the influence of alcohol. Aviva's come into it again. But Aviva done a study, and 31% of people suffer from insomnia. 67% of people suffer from disrupted sleep. 23% regularly get no more than 5 hours sleep. And the problem with that is that even moderate sleep deprivation can result in the same cognitive effects as drinking alcohol. And we frown upon drink driving, and it's against the law, but so many people are actually sleep deprived. The definition of sleep deprivation is regularly getting 7 hours or less sleep per night. And in all honesty, I get 7-8 hours of sleep, and when I'm stressed, that'll be a little bit more broken. But there's some nights we get a little bit less, but most of us are getting regular sleep deprivation. And Apple done a study with the American Health Association that there were 2 million people that they studied, and they used Apple Watches, they used iPhones and things like that. And most people overestimated their sleep by about 30 minutes, meaning they went to bed at 11, got up at 6, thinking they had 7 hours sleep. But actually it was 6.5 hours. And that was what the average, this is based in America, the average American on that study had 6.5 hours sleep. So we can see that on average, the Western society as a population is sleep deprived, which is stopping our ability to actually be able to refuel and to recharge for the day. We need sleep to regenerate ourselves. We need sleep to clear out waste and detoxification. We can't just detox with a shake or anything like that. We need to be asleep to actually detoxify for long periods of time. When we're asleep, our short-term memories will change into long-term memories. So if we're not getting sleep, we're going to end up getting poor memory. We're going to end up forgetting things. It might be that you go upstairs and you're walking up the stairs and you think, why did I just come up here? And that's a big, big thing. You wonder where your phone is and forget you're actually scrolling on Instagram at the same time. We see so many issues with hormones, and hormonal balance is a bit of it's a touchy subject because we don't balance our hormones. We have to have different levels of certain ones, but when we sleep, we start helping our body with getting the right levels of hormones and clearing hormones as we need to, and recharging our batteries. So, would you leave your phone on no charge? This is one thing which a lot of people we look at, and I know I charge my phone overnight, and I get in the morning. If I get to my phone and it's at 20%, and I need that phone for the rest of the day, I'm going to be a little bit frustrated. And we've got mobile chargers and things like that, but most of us are actually going out for the day. We've got a phone, our body's battery on 25-30%, if that. Now the problem with that is that there are things that eat at our battery all throughout the day. Say you get to work and you're driving to work and someone cuts you up at the roundabout, that's then lowered your charge. You're then stuck in traffic because there's some crazy roadworks around Mousehole. They're like up the whole of Mousehole, it seems at the moment. There's some crazy roadworks around there, and now you're going to be late. Then you have a meeting with a client that you don't really like spending time with. Then you have your performance review, all these different things. You've got to sack someone, whatever it is. Then you get home, and you're sitting outside, you've had some annoying email. Now, how do we expect to go into our house and feel good to then spend time with our husbands, wives, sons, daughters, dogs, whoever it is, cats as well, let's not discriminate to cats. How do we expect to spend time and not be reactive to these people when we've left the house on 20-30% and come back and actually we're probably in the minuses? So we have to look at what causes stress. So there's three main things that we look at with stress. Now we have physical stresses. And physical stresses are going to be too much exercise, too little exercise. Look at what I mentioned about bodybuilding, is that I was severely overtrained. My hormones were not in a good place, my moods were not in a good place. Looked good, but weren't able to function. Nutrient deficiencies. So many things that go on in our bodies. I do when a client comes to me, we do a full blood test, we do a nutrient deficiency test as well, and I'm seeing so many people that aren't able to get oxygen around their body effectively. So many cases of anemia, deficiencies in iron, things like that, because we're not able to actually take this raw material from the food we have and then go through a process called methylation in and around our liver to actually turn that raw material into a usable form. So we're seeing so many nutrient deficiencies. In fact, there's a gene called the MTHFR gene, which is a bit of one of them if you can see what the letters stand for, but it's responsible for methylation. 44% of the Western world have this genetic polymorphism in this gene, which means they cannot take those raw materials and put them into usable form. So we're having things like folic acid, where folic acid is one of the things which we struggle to absorb at the best of times. And most people can't actually absorb it, so taking it ends up meaning that we stop absorbing it even more from food. So we get more and more deficiencies that happen as a result. Then actually, that then links to more anxiety, panic attacks, and depression. I actually remember when I As I said, I used to work for Aviva, and I left there after losing two secondments. I was having panic attacks, and I was having loads of anxiety, and it just wasn't a nice place to be in. Doing a deficiency test, I was deficient in what we call folate, or methylfolate, which is the B vitamin that comes from folic acid. So I had to supplement and improve that with the activated form, with the converted form. Then we have a look at physical side of things, sleep deprivation, the big thing we have there. Then there's another sort of stress, emotional stress, which so many of us have thrown at us left, right and centre since 2020 with COVID, with lockdowns, with the news. It's bad news sells. Now, I don't know about you guys, I don't watch the news that much. I'm quite late to it, apart from football and sports news. Quite late to the party with a lot of things, but there's other things with relationships cause a lot of stress. They cause a lot of happiness as well, hopefully, but financial stress, family stress, and community as well. In fact, it's been shown when we look at emotional stress that if you have a conversation with someone who's low on energy and really negative, it can shrink our hippocampus in our brain, which is what deals with the fear and anxiety side of things. So that is in around 5 minutes of spending with that time. So it's very much like, be aware of the people you spend time with. If you look at WhatsApp, look at Messenger, whatever you use to message people, look at the 5 people you're at the top there and just see, like, are they positive people? And also, are you being positive around them? How can we improve? And one of the ways is literally by going back to that phone, charging your body battery, setting yourself up for success with sleep and stress management. And the last one, which kind of gets overlooked, which is kind of physical as well, is air quality. Toxins that are around. People are never going to stop getting exposure to toxins. It's not possible. But what we can do is make our body be more able to tolerate the toxins that are thrown at us. We live in one of the worst air qualities in Norfolk, in the UK, because of the farming side of things. And we need to make sure our body can detoxify. If we get good sleep and have good liver and kidney function, good methylation, we can detoxify. The problem is that nutrient deficiencies, alcohol, loads of caffeine, poor sleep is stopping us being able to do that. Mold is a big one. In fact, I was brought up in a small bedroom in Helston, and I had black mold from around 2 years till 17. And mold basically saturated my tissues. And we had to do a big detoxification process when we found out why I was constantly getting migraines. And we've done some work on it, but still, if I go into a room and there's mold there, I start sniffing a lot more, and I start getting a bit bunged up. If I spend too much time in it, I get more migraines. I was speaking in Miami in March, and I went to see a client in Orlando beforehand, and it's a weird Airbnb where he booked it, and I had to go through the back of the Airbnb, like through his bedroom. It's just a box room, that wasn't a bedroom, but I was in there, and suddenly the next day I started getting migraines. And we had to move my talk. When we went to his event in Miami, we had to move it the next day. I just had 5 migraines that next week. Literally from a day, 2 days of mold exposure. BPAs that we see, plastics that we're around, again, we're not going to stop ourselves from being exposed to this stuff. It's just making sure our body is in a much better space to deal with it. So I see this with stress is that people will skip sleep to do work that stresses them out. Then that low sleep increases stress, which we mask with caffeine, which causes more stress, and then we deal with being wired from caffeine with alcohol, which causes more stress and worse sleep. It's a vicious circle that we can take ownership of it if we start to look at prioritizing ourselves, which seems to be one of the hardest things to do in this day and age. We have families that they have to come first, our jobs, our careers have to come first, but then all these other things have to come first. So first thing we can do is prioritize. If we can prioritize sleep, we can start setting ourselves up for success. If we're staying up to watch the latest episode of, I don't know, Love Island, I've not seen one of those episodes, thankfully. First dates, I'm trying to think of things that my wife watches. But things that we could catch up on. If we're staying up late because we've got a fear of actually seeing the spoiler alert on Instagram, then we'll watch it later. But can we just put it on record? Most things are on demand nowadays. making sure we have good blood glucose management. Alongside sleep, blood glucose is the biggest thing that I deal with, those two things, and there's so many ups and downs with blood glucose. And a lot of people link it just with diabetes. And a lot of people are pre-diabetic, it's linked with obesity. But I've seen so many people not being overweight that are insulin resistant and pre-diabetic because of stress. Because cortisol has all sorts of interactions with glucose. Then we have a look at good sleep hygiene. So many people will get up at 6 on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, go to bed at 10, 11, and then on the Friday night it's, oh yeah, I don't have to work tomorrow, so I'll go to bed at 12, 1, get up at then 10 o'clock on the Saturday, have loads of food they wouldn't normally have. Our body has its own circadian, its own body clock, a circadian rhythm. Now, actually the Earth rotates. The actual daytime is 23 hours, 56 minutes in a certain amount of seconds. It's slowed down in, there's a really great book called Lifetime by Russell Foster, I believe it is. Talks about this. And our actual body clock is 24.1 hours. So we have to absorb that time, and we do that by getting good sleep. So one of the problems is that when we wake up, we're tired because we haven't had good sleep. So we have caffeine, which then stops us being able to wake up effectively. And no need to go into the science or anything like that, but trying to stop having caffeine first thing and skipping it for 90 minutes. If you have an afternoon energy dips, try that, and pretty certainly you will see improvements in those afternoon energy dips. And getting good light exposure. Easier said than done getting sun exposure in the UK, but getting outside within the first 20, 30 minutes, even if it's having whatever drink you have, going outside, standing and just being in the daylight will help your body clock sync. Then we look at nutrient diversity. Working on our gut health. We can do tests, as I said. You can do tests to actually find out what you're deficient in, what you need, what you don't need. A lot of people will supplement the things, and again, like the folic acid example, they'll have a multivitamin because that's what people have said to have without knowing whether they need it. Then we get high levels of certain things and low levels of certain things. Actually looking at creating diversity in your microbiome is really, really powerful. Our microbiome is full of loads of good bacteria and bad bacteria. Now, one of the problems is that we have a lot of alcohol, and that kills bacteria. A lot of people, years ago, used to get alcohol put on cuts to clean it, and we do that in our gut. So we need to repopulate this gut with good bacteria to help it to then help itself. So we do that by not just getting high levels of fibre, but getting different fibres in there. So working on that, working with the deficiencies. Now, this is something which 10 years ago, if you'd have told me to sit there and breathe more and do meditation and whatever, but there's a thing I do, probably not say every day, but 4 or 5 days out of the week, a thing called yoga nidra. It's not loads of stretching or anything like that. It's literally laying down, and it's a practice called non-sleep deep rest. And if you wear a Garmin or whatever you wear, or a ring, Apple Watch, you do this for half an hour and it'll tell you you've had a nap when you've not had a nap. It's so powerful to help recharge, and it's basically focusing on, you focus on your thumb, your index finger, your middle finger, and if you're not able to meditate because your mind is just so busy, or like me, you suffer from ADHD or anything like that, then actually trying this will help you switch off. And so many times, and I've been seriously guilty of this in the past, that just not taking time to switch off. Because if any of you run your own business or anything like that, then you're a high achiever. You want to be replying to your emails later. You don't want people to wait. You want to get back to in this 24/7 connected world. I've got clients I've got someone in Taiwan, I've got someone in San Francisco. So they're the complete opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to times that I want to reply to them as soon as they message me. But we have to take time to switch off. And the movement side of things, like I've been in the place where I would smash workouts, and now I go and have some fun, have a chat, like not doing too much, but actually making sure we move enough. So many people are going to high intensity classes without doing resistance training. That's going to help a lot, but one of the most underestimated things I find is that we're not doing enough pushing cardio, but not overly pushing. So what we mean by that is that we can break our heart rate into different zones. And we want to do some work in a 60 to 70% of our maximum heart rate to help us then get to sleep. And with the exercise side of things, which isn't on here, is that? Why am I there? Right, yeah. With the exercise side of things is that if you struggle with sleep and you're finishing work, and maybe that's the only time you can exercise, just see if you sleep better on the nights that you don't exercise late at night. Because exercise is going to boost cortisol. Cortisol is going to go into, during the day we should have high cortisol in the morning and then it starts to get low, our stress hormone. We have another thing called melatonin which helps us switch off, which should get high. And cortisol and melatonin are inversely related, so when one's high, the other one will be low. Exercise is going to boost the cortisol. So if we're boosting that in the evening, then we need to be able to switch off afterwards. So just see if you sleep better. And then things like community. Find a positive one. As I said, 5 minutes around a negative person shrinks the hippocampus. I've been exposed to some amazing communities in the last few months, and I'm super, super grateful for that, because I used to find that I'm really aware of energy levels, and I just get drawn down in energy if I'm with the wrong people. So it's been shown that that is going to help people with their health. And lastly, I'll be guilty of this, just ask for help. So many of us are going through these things. We're going through the symptoms of poor health, and we think we're going to deal with it later. My dad had the story where he saw the issues with stress. He saw the migraines. He saw the sleep issues. Like, couldn't spend loads of time with his family. And don't wait until it's too late. Actually, look to see if there's one little thing. There's a question in functional medicine. 2 questions. Is that, what one thing can you add to your life right now that will make you healthier? We all know one thing, but we also know what one thing we can do to take away from our life right now to make us healthier. So ask yourself that regularly, and if you want to improve your health, you will be able to. So I've got, anyone got any questions at all?
So when you talk about unbroken sleep, what about when you've got kids?
It's probably, again, this is a very common thing that I get asked, is that your kids will wake you up, but on the nights they don't wake you up, are you sleeping through?
Oh, yeah.
So, do your best. So set yourself up for success once again, so that if you're getting 2 hours of sleep and then they wake you up, that they're literally the best 2 hours of sleep as well. Now also, going back to that folic acid thing, and again, I recommend testing before you do it, but a lot of times with kids is that there's deficiencies in folate or methylfolate, so not the actual folic acid, the activated form, because they're not able to methylate effectively, and a lot of foods are fortified with folic acid, that we see in the breads and things like that. And a lot of times what happens with children is that there's an overload of folic acid, so they wake up because they're having bad nightmares. And then what they do is that they have these nightmares, and all the things, it gets our brain just going and going and going. They have these nightmares and then will jump into your bed because they're scared, right? So then you can't sleep. So see if there's anything you can do to help them sleep as well.
What would you recommend? You mentioned about blood glucose management. What would you work on to improve that?
So I would, again, test the glucose. You can get finger pricks, like manual glucometers. They are probably about £20, and then testing strips. I personally prefer to use a constant glucose meter probably 2-3 times a year, which is, you might see like white discs that people have on their arms, and they will track your glucose for 24 hours, and they basically take 8 hours of data. So you keep scanning your phone on your arm, and it will track through the night as well. And if we're seeing ups and downs all the time, and it's interesting when you wake up, or maybe you need to go to the toilet, it's usually because there's a dip, and then there's a spike in glucose, which is your cortisol boosting up. So I would look at the constant ones. They're about £50 for 2 weeks. So it's not the cheapest thing, but it's so beneficial when we can improve our glucose management. We're going to see so much better focus, so much better sleep, so much better energy, or so many improvements of health. Anyone else at all? Cool. Oh yeah, last one as well, and I've been told if I don't say this. I have got a copy of my book back there, which is £10 each, and the profits of that will go to Soul Church as well. So if anyone wants a copy, let me know, they're at the back, and Well, I've got nowhere to pay unless you've got cash. So that might be a factor. So we can grab them on Amazon if so. But thank you.
I think that was really good, really helpful, and obviously may raise a number of questions. So if people want to get in touch with Ollie afterwards, please do. And